Good morning, Upper Sixth. It's Easter holidays after 3 p.m. today. Thank goodness for that. And then we've got 3.5 weeks of revision leave before the madness of the summer term. And a couple of weeks later, you'll be in your exams. So hopefully you're prepared. Anyway, this was in the news today. Fantastic article. I've put the link down to the Times. I keep using their stuff, so we should promote the student version, £10 for the year. You should have already been subscribed, and if not, subscribe now because it'll be useful if you go to uni. So what we've got up here is we can see that Lord Wolfson, we've done a lot on Next over the last few weeks. Wolfson is aiming for £1 billion worth of annual profits. And we can see that we've got that to go for. Easy maths already, isn't it? So straight away, take one away from the other, and we know how much they need to improve their profits by. What an easy piece of application using some quantitative information. I'm sure you would have all picked up on that, which is really good. So I thought we would have a little bit of an Ansoff style question. Because the article explores, they're going to expand in the UK. We know that they've put so much energy and investment into things like the Total platform, and they're boosting their online sales. And yes, they're closing some bricks and mortar retail stores, but they're also expanding that into destination shopping areas. The expression that one of the press mentioned about Next is the cockroaches of the high street, and that is meant to be a compliment, by the way, because as our traditional high street retail is in decline, Next seem to be bucking that trend, which is fantastic for them. However, we need to think about other retail and what's happening in the UK. We also need to think about the aims and objectives of this organisation. Well, clearly we have the aims and objectives here of this organisation, and should they possibly go into a new market, possibly with a bit of a new product, or should they focus on what they do well in their established cash cow market? So if we're thinking about growth, is this rapid growth, or is it just a bit more growth? Or if we're talking profits, we need to think about how we would define profits. Well, either I'm selling more stuff at the same profit margin-ish, therefore increasing my profits to £1 billion, or it could be that I'm going to cut costs significantly. Look at the recent results from John Lewis. They're back into profit, and lots of that is because they've been closing stores and making lots of people redundant, as well as their sales are picking up a little bit. Clearly, this is paper 3 or theme 3, and we're looking at theme 4 as well, because we've got elements of globalization in here, and there's loads of stuff. Actually, it's probably all 4 themes. So just as a quick reminder, we've already done an Ansoff video for this paper, and we've done loads of stuff on this. So good old Igor Ansoff. And this is all about risks. So thank you to the website that I stole this from as well. And so we can see here, so if we're looking at our existing products, existing market penetration, this is doing what we already do. We do it well, and actually let's maintain our market share, market size sort of thing with a bit of marketing, build rapport with customers, encourage them to come back and buy more, jeggings. And therefore I've got a lower risk strategy here. Okay, we might be spending a little bit less money on advertising. We think about our product life cycle, and actually if we're in market maturity, we might be just reminding customers to come into us and not go to the evil Marks and Spencers in this case. Whereas if we are going into a new market, think about your product life cycle in a different marketplace. Maybe we're in the introduction or growth stages. Number one, there's more inherent risk here, according to Ansoff, and also reflecting on the product life cycle, we're thinking about the strategies we might use. We might be spending a lot more money on advertising here compared to market penetration. Okay, so don't just regurgitate the axes. Don't just say it's more risk according to Igor, but think about other models that you could use. And my default would be the language of the product life cycle, because it makes me think about introduction, growth, maturity, decline, stuff like that. Okay, so you be confident with that language. Now, in a previous video, I sort of mentioned that, yes, Ansoff Matrix is this according to the A-level spec, but really the way we would describe it is a bit more like this 9-quadrant grid. Now, lots of students think, oh, you're in this one, for example, you're in market expansion. Well, you could be down here, you could be up there, you could be over here somewhere. So you have to think about this on a sort of a spectrum, okay? So we're expanding here, and we're thinking, well, is this a little bit of expansion through diversification? Now, if you describe the diversification, yeah, then you're not just saying this is diversification. If you describe it as in context, and actually it probably will be a nicer answer to mark. Okay, and that's what you need to be thinking about as we're looking for context and demonstrating those level 4 characteristics, which we will remind you of in a little bit. Okay, so that's the language of Ansoff, and we've linked that into the strategies we might see in the product life cycle. And there's other stuff you could use as well, by the way. We know there's inflation. I might bring in a bit of YED, the language of YED. It could be that we see that, we've got prices, and we'll think about PED with prices going up as well. So we have to think about income, real income with YED, and obviously that prices if you want to. But don't just throw theory at this. Everything's got to be contextualized, or you're just not going to get the marks for it. Okay, the risk with this type of question is you would have revised Ansoff inside and out, left and right. And if it's overly, let me just tell you about the theory, it's not going to end well. So here's the question. I'll show you the case study in a second. But as a quick reminder, we would need to identify the hooks. So we know normally, not always, that the hooks are mentioned twice. So this is my hook, and I would put a circle or a box around it, put a H next to it, and over here we can see increase its profits to £1 billion. Okay, I wouldn't write hook twice, by the way. I'm just doing this to illustrate the point. Keep an eye out for the newer style of 20 markers, and you'll find that it's normally mentioned twice, but don't rely on that, by the way. You have to think, which is good. So we know that they want to increase it to that. And also we know what the from figure was as well, don't we? Now, 20 markers are always 2 options. It even says 2 options there. So they're considering 2 options, either to adopt a market penetration strategy. So we quickly pop down to market penetration, and we can see that this is existing products and existing markets. Okay, so that's what we're going to define for our first option, isn't it? Or diversification. Okay, so diversification is number 2. Diversification is new markets with new products. Now, when we are looking in the case study, basically this is my plan, by the way, because obviously we've got which one is most likely. Yeah, most likely, not I recommend this one. Overall, this is the most likely would be a better answer, clearly. But now we know the definitions using how we would look at market penetration, for example, existing products, existing markets. When I'm going to the case study, I'm going to be looking for some contextual examples of existing markets and existing products. Again, for diversification, I'm going to be looking for examples of new products, and they mention some brands that they've just started working with, which might help them break into the US, by the way, new markets as in the USA. So it says up here, market penetration in the UK or diversification. Well, diversification isn't necessarily a new country, but If a new country is mentioned in the case study, guess what you're talking about. Okay, so there you go. Quite easy to plan these things. If you read the question and briefly plan it before you go to the case study, at least when you're reading the case study, you know what you're looking for. Once you've found it, you start writing. You've got 1.2 minutes per mark to write and plan and identify the evidence. By this stage, you would have answered the 8, 10 and 12 marker. Hopefully you've read all the case studies. Maybe there's one short case study that you haven't read, so you haven't got to read all of them again. You should have the knowledge from the 8, 10 and 12 in your head, and if it's relevant, you might be able to use some of that knowledge from or application from the previous questions. Not always, but sometimes you can. That's why you do your questions in order. Just look at the last couple of years worth of papers and you'll see that actually you can use quite a lot of the information from the earlier questions. So when I was thinking about this question, I was thinking, well, how could it possibly link into this year's research theme? So clearly I've just clipped this out of the PDF from Edexcel, and we've got our bullet points that hopefully you've watched the videos for. And I've not titled this video with a link to any of these because actually I think it links to, with a bit of creative thinking for one of them, but I think it links to all of them. So I'm not going to read this out verbatim, you can read the screen, but we understand that there are market trends. We know that there are more people buying online, there are more people that buy from Next. Maybe they love it and they're going to keep coming back. And they could think about that they're very good at this. They're the cockroaches of the high street. They've already proven that they can come out the other end of this declining retail environment and actually through technology take advantage, capitalise on these trends. We can link that into market penetration quite easily. And there's also similar trends seen in the US as well. So maybe they could use their experience of the UK in the US, even though it's a different market. Forms of business. Well, actually, this is more about barriers. In some ways, one of the strengths of Next is they made £918 million worth of profit. And also, people love Next. Their share price has gone up. You know that from previous revision video. So even if they wanted to borrow money, they probably could at a reasonable rate. So it's very competitive out there, not so much against the independents, even though there are some big ones out there, but the multinational corporations, these big companies that own firms like Zara, for example, they are massive. Next is Next. So yes, they're big, but are they as big as the mighty company that owns Zara that has eluded me? So actually, you need to think about this, maybe, okay? Not so much of a forms of business. We're not going to go for a flotation here. They are already PLC. So yes, they are making a lot of money. And maybe by going into a new market with some new products, not all new products, so think about that spectrum of diversification. Maybe there's more growth opportunity if they go and go to a new market. Maybe the UK is a slower growth, but they can still reach that 1 billion. Do the maths between it. So business growth in UK clothing retailers. So it's not just that Next are doing well. We need to think about others that aren't. Debenhams not so long ago. We're seeing declines in other brands out there. We've done Ted Baker, I think 2 days ago. So there's lots of cautionary tales out there. And maybe if Next over expand in a market that's not really growing that much for them at the moment, where's the growth opportunity there? Okay, maybe. Entrepreneurs. So, I think this is more about entrepreneurial skills to do with the entrepreneurial skills within the company. And I've mentioned that when we look at diversification a little bit. But don't think that it's only the small business startups and the exciting rapid growth companies that are entrepreneurial. The big retailers are very entrepreneurial. Someone thought of the total platform and it has revolutionized their business within the 3 years of them launching it. Okay, that is a new idea. It's risky. That's having belief in yourself and identifying a gap in the marketplace. All of those things we can link into entrepreneurialism if the question came up. Distribution, clearly, next to pretty much everywhere, not everywhere, but probably pretty much nearly everywhere. We don't want level 2 assertion. So in some ways, they've got that saturation of coverage and maybe they can just go to some geographic areas if they need to. Switching from declining bricks and mortar retailing to online is a distribution style question, which we've done before. Diversification, obviously we know the new markets and the new products. It doesn't mean they're going to start selling cars or something. That's not that type of diversification we're talking about here. But there is evidence of diversification in the case study when we eventually get to it. So understanding the new markets, it's new just because we sort of speak the same language as the Americans. It does not mean we are the same. Our culture is very Americanized, but it does not mean we are the same. So don't leap to that conclusion, please. There are differences. Obviously, location is quite important as well. I'll put the rest up for you. And we need to think about, yes, at the moment, you can buy some stuff from Nordstrom. So I went on to Nordstrom's website to researching this for you. And all I could find on their website was Next baby clothes. So it could be that they've dipped their toe in the water, see how they got on with Nordstrom, and now they can possibly start selling some of their other ranges that are very popular in the UK, for example. But Nordstrom itself are a bricks and mortar department store. It's a destination shopping experience, but they're struggling. But are they going to be helped by Next in the future? By being a concession in their stores, for example, or will Next suffer because of the decline in the department stores that we see in the USA? You can decide, can't you? I mentioned the entrepreneurial skills down here of Lord Wilson and his team. I tend to quote in class to you Jeff Bezos. He said the reason he's so successful is he surrounds himself with brilliant people. It's not all about Jeff Bezos, okay? Really important. And every leader, if you've read their biography, will talk about the people that they are surrounded by. So here there are 2 data extracts. So we've got a concise, reduced version of the Times article. And then over here, we've got macroeconomic factors linked into that bullet point 1 and bullet point 1b. And I've broken it down for you to make it relatively easy so you can focus on some of the things, okay, that we need to. But this is a great opportunity to quickly plan. So we know that this is the hook. I'm not going to circle it twice. I know it's there as well. And we know that it's 1 billion. So I want to know what it was before. And we know that from the picture in the first data extract, even though I've managed not to put it in there. So it is considering 2 options, which is market penetration, and we know that that is existing product, existing market, or diversification, new market, new products. I'm going to go in and find the evidence, well you are, for market penetration. We're going to look at a new market with some new products. It's also invested in jewels, fat face. That looks quite new to me because we've got brand expansion there. Okay, so this is new and maybe these brands will help them with this diversification strategy. Okay, so some quantitative stuff in here. 2021 to 2024 stats, which are probably as accurate as they can be. Depending how well ChatGPT searched the internet, they look okay to me. And you just need to think about froms and tos. You're looking for opportunities for a cheeky calculation to get some of those top level application marks, as long as you're inferring what it is. It could be that you decide that you're going to maybe mention that, but actually let's focus more on this. And inflation's come down even more since, if you're keeping up to date with the news. Okay, slightly lower inflation here. You could do a comparison between the two. Okay, so we've got wage growths down here, inflation. You've got lots of stuff going on here, and it helps you to compare and contrast. The UK has X percentage higher inflation than the US. This could be important because, if that's your point, by the way, okay, we've got sustainability, investment dressing, which is taken from some of the next article, and obviously we've got the points here about the decline, and actually you will see that in the UK and the US. Okay, lots of information. This is where you pause and you plan your answer, but maybe we'll give you some tips. There's no answer this time, but we can come up with some tips. So just remember, we are not aiming for perfection. We are aiming for level 4. Level 4, if you hit the bottom of level 4, you're going to get 75%. No idea what the grade boundaries are this year, but if we go by the 2019 grade boundaries, that's an A-star equivalent for this question. So if you manage your time and complete the paper, and you hit all those 4 markers at full marks, all the 8 marker at full marks, and you get level 4 and the rest of it, you're going to get at least an A, maybe an A-star. So those of you that are trying to over-perfect your answers and running out of time, you can have a strict word with yourself over the Easter holidays and actually listen to the advice that we're giving you about aiming for level 4. So we've got that knowledge throughout, okay? And it's very important that that includes your conclusion, your justification, and your MOPs. Don't write an abstract anything. Okay, everything has to be in context. We're going to use those chains of argument, and yes, we would love to see 5, but if you're going to do 3 with some evidence, and you actually say this evidence could be interpreted as, you're probably going to accidentally go up to 5 anyway. 5 is not the magic number. It's what you're really doing with it in context and using the theory. Remember, at the beginning of this, I mentioned that you could use the language of product life cycle, for example, to talk about strategies. Well, number 1, that's application using a theory. And number 2, it's probably going to result in another 1 or 2 chains of argument. We're going to use quantitative and qualitative. You see numbers, you do a calculation. Okay? Even if it's just a subtraction, you can then talk about it. And we've used that, haven't we? And we're using it to support judgments. A full awareness of validity, okay, and reliability of data if it's there as well. So how valid is this to the hook in the question, okay? How significant is this competing argument? Well, in your conclusion, you're going to say, I choose this one because the other one's not quite as good, because if I went with the other one, I wouldn't achieve this in the short term, medium term. Yeah, and that opens up your MOPs for the longer term. Our judgment is going to be contextualized properly, and this is where you're going to do that comparative analysis. So this is so important if you want top level marks. Answering the question and everything else being lined up is probably going to get you into level 4. This is the sort of thing that will probably squeeze you towards the top of level 4. Your recommendation will be overall, this is the one that I think will be, you're going to use the hook, so most likely to achieve its profits. Okay, so, and remember, that's our hook. And we're going to come back to that hook before we do our conclusion, aren't we? So you directly answer the question and not accidentally answer it in the style of a TikTok. So step 1, identify the hook. Yeah, do a bit of maths there, couldn't we? You're going to define market penetration and diversification. Okay, now if it was me, I would define market penetration, then write my first 2p paragraphs. and then I would do diversification and then do my P paragraphs for that, because then I can start this off in context. Diversification for next might be expanding its range in the USA through Nordstrom, including some of the new products that we've seen, including Fat Face. Okay, so easy. You've contextualized the definition, and it's a foundation of a beautiful P paragraph. We're going to write option 1. We're not going to write that, but we're going to do option 1, market penetration in the UK. And we're going to do our P structure. Here's some points. It's up to you. I'm not going to read through this, and this is not the answer. So it's suggesting some things that you might want to consider when practicing it. Okay? And then we're going to do another P, and it's going to be obviously for our disadvantages. Okay? So we've got balance, which is quite useful really when you think that we need leading to balanced. Yeah. Then we're going to do a second one, diversification. Same thing, some points for you to think about. Maybe you can use your own. And I've not done any of the calculations for you. You're going to need to do those yourself, clearly. And then there's some suggestions here about a comparison between the UK and US. If you get some comparisons into your paragraphs as you're writing them, then we're achieving these comparisons, this higher level 4 marks in the paragraphs, and then we'll do a bit more in the conclusion. If you do them separately and then you compare in the conclusion, it's still going to be level 4. It's just that you might not be towards the top of it, depending on the examiner's mood. Conclusions and justification, I advise you write these separately. So this is when we go back to the hook. We pause for a second, we go back to the hook. Most likely, not that this is the only one they should do or something ridiculous like that. And then we can answer it. We're then going to justify by bad-mouthing the other option in the short term. And then we could think about aims of that longer term growth prospects if need be, when we think about our MOPs. Here's a suggestion. It is a dynamic market. It is changing a lot. There is a big shift towards online, and maybe Next could use its total platform in the US, depending on their manufacturing and distribution networks, in the future. If it's been so successful in the UK, it might be successful in the US. But for that argument to actually stick, at least say, if other clothing fashion retailers in the US haven't got advanced technologies such as the total platform, at least you're doing a bit of a comparison. You can't say this will lead to world domination without some sort of comparison. Okay, so make sure when you're talking about competitiveness, competition, competitive advantage, at least describe someone who might not have the technology, for example. Don't just leap to a presumption. Okay? Look at that. Hopefully that's okay. For my students, only at my set, if you want to answer this and email it to me, I am happy to mark it for you over the Easter break, but not all of your past papers that you're going to be doing. You should be using the mark schemes, examiner reports, and you can mark some of the examples in the examiner reports, can't you? Pop onto Dobby's website. There's a shortcut link to all of it. And lucky revision. Hope you enjoy your Easter.